Can SAITO hit $1, therefore 100xing in 2025? Well, I definitely think so, because this project fundamentally changes the cryptocurrency game. And when I first researched SAITO, my jaw literally hit the ground in amazement, because it taught me things and solves things that I just never knew about before. So stay tuned. You're going to want to hear about SAITO in today's video, guys. But first, and for the most part, this is a TLDR video, right? Meaning I'm not going to go into depth with SAITO. So if any of you are SAITO fans, you're not going to learn anything more in this video other than my price prediction at the very end. But suffice to say, if you want to see my full breakdown, I am coming out with it in 2 weeks, which, if I've published it already, will be up here, linked up here, so you can go ahead and watch that video, okay? And it's very important you do, because I go over the technicals, the ecosystem, and also the fundamentals, aka the tokenomics, in that video, breaking it all down and laying it all on the table for you guys in the most 100% transparent and honest way possible, okay? This video is just designed to be very, very quick and introduce you to the topic of SAITO. Now, SAITO for the most part is a layer 1 blockchain, right? It's competing with other smart contract-esque networks like Ethereum, Cardano, for example, Solana, Near Protocol, so on and so forth, right? So it is like a smart contract-esque type network, but right now it doesn't have compatibility with smart contracts or doesn't support smart contracts because the mainnet isn't actually released, which we'll touch on again soon. But one thing you need to know about this particular video, guys, is, look, I've tried to re-record this like 7 or 8 times already, and it is extremely difficult to do because SAITO is like the one project that I've ever reviewed where I cannot explain at least even one point on how the technology works, because the minute I do, it makes no sense. You have to explain so much more, otherwise you're going to be scratching your head and puzzled, okay? So I am going to actually refrain from mentioning anything about all too much in terms of the technology, how it actually works. I'm going to save it for my full breakdown where I can be as concise as possible and actually read from a script. So I'm not umming, ahhing, and kind of like leading you on a huge tangent, okay? So hopefully you understand the reason why. So fundamentally, SAITO solves one thing and one thing only that has allowed it to restructure its network and build it from the ground up. It's completely different from other networks, right? And that word is incentivization. So the word incentivization pretty much means how can the network itself incentivize nodes or users to work for the network, benefit the network entirely, kind of like network effects, right? But also, and not kind of look just within themselves and try to take the most from the network. Now, everyone is greedy. Everyone wants money. Everyone wants to be rewarded for things. And, you know, nodes definitely are. But the way they are actually forces them to contribute to the network, okay? And sustain the network rather than just proof of stake or proof of work where it's very me. Okay, so SAITO, as I said, kind of structures how blockchains work from the ground up, right? For the starters, the network, the blockchain itself is a blockchain, okay? It works just like Bitcoin would, for example, but the network has a set size, it's called an epoch, and blocks actually fall off the chain itself when a new block is added at a certain height. So it might be block 100, but it might be a 100 block epoch, but when block 101 is added to the network, block 1 falls off, right? And so there's this like looping system that actually enables the network to have on-chain storage and price in storage sustainably, so that if you want to keep transactions on the network, like if, for example, a smart contract was a decentralized identification particular project, and they want, you want to submit, I don't know, for example, like a driver's license that might be valid for 3 years, you can submit that to the network for that period of time, okay? And then after 3 years, you need to renew it. If not, it falls off and the network forgets about it, okay? Now, the network works differently in terms of miners itself, okay? So it is a proof of work esque network. It uses considerably less resources than what Bitcoin does, but it does it in a very weird and different way, okay? So there's 2 types of nodes on the network called miners or SAITO nodes, and you also have routing nodes. Now, routing nodes are the real sort of amazing part of SAITO, and it pretty much, because SAITO is a peer-to-peer network, the way that you interact with the network is all through routing nodes that are actually benefited the closer they are to the person interacting with the network, including applications, okay? And because SAITO is a pure peer-to-peer network, unlike Ethereum and other networks where you have like this middleman. So for example, if you're looking at, if you want to use the analogy of a group of people sitting by themselves and you want to talk to that group of people, other networks like Ethereum have a third person there, or a brick wall, if you will, that you have to interact with to get into the network itself, like Ethereum and MetaMask, because fundamentally a lot of the network is built upon that third party, so you can't interact with the network without going through them first, which creates all type of bottleneck fees, okay? But SAITO is completely peer-to-peer, just like Bitcoin, okay? So you actually interact with the network, and routing nodes are those first points of contact, and they're the ones that produce the blocks, okay? All miners do is solve an equation or a mathematical problem, which is called a golden ticket, that unlocks the rewards in a block, which otherwise, if not, they're burned, okay? So the miners are pretty important, okay? But they don't create the blocks themselves. That's the routing nodes, but the routing nodes also have the responsibility of actually distributing the transactions as they come into the network, and they're incentivized to be that first point of contact, okay? So they're more or less like ISPs, or internet service providers. They can be customizable. They can offer different things to users to make a user more incentivized to use one routing node over the next, so on and so forth. And they can be quite an amazing array of possibilities created from this sort of system, and there's quite a lot to go into there. So hopefully you can excuse me by keeping that quite blank and plain, but again, if you want to know actually how that works, stay tuned for my video. I go over it quite nice and high level so you can understand it, okay? So fundamentally, SAITO solves the economic issues associated with other networks, and in the protocol itself has baked in principles that other networks just aren't solving. For example, storage, with that rotating blockchain through those ATR transactions where they fall off and have to be rebroadcasted, okay? So other networks rely on third-party storage options like Filecoin or IPFS, which ultimately creates an attack vector or a chink in the armor for security, right? So ultimately, you need to look for a blockchain or a network that is hyper-focused on keeping things on-chain, right? You can almost think of it like as this distributed computer where everything needs to be on the network, you know what I mean? It's pretty crappy if you have a computer with like 1 gigabyte of storage and you have to always rely on Apple or Google cloud services for your storage, right? No one wants to do that. You feel like that's very vulnerable, and you can pretty much think of that as pretty much akin to keeping storage and data on chain, okay? So with this structure, SAITO has solved the scalability trilemma. Matter of fact, they've pretty much gone, the scalability trilemma doesn't even exist, because it's all based on incentivization, okay? So I'm not going to touch any more on that. Very quickly, I do want to touch on the tokenomics of SAITO, and I want to kind of leave a little bit on the board for my other video, so I'm not going to touch too much in depth, but more or less, SAITO itself isn't already on mainnet, as I said earlier in the video, all right? So SAITO is right now just a network going through its trials and tests. So this actual SAITO token, the network native token, isn't able to be used right now. And that's pretty much where all the team-related entities are having their tokens distributed. For example, the community-run foundation will have all of their 20% of their tokens distributed into the native tokens. So will the core team, which shows that the team are devoted to the project because they don't pretty much own much of the actual ERC20 and BEP20 tokens that I'm going to explain in just a second. Also, the rewards, strategic partners, and a portion or most of the contributors and developers are having all of their tokens distributed into the mainnet token itself, which means they can't transfer the token out of SAITO until the mainnet is released. So it does show that the team and any other entities that are actually relating to this distribution are waiting until mainnet is released. Now, when will mainnet be released? Well, there's a 4-phase process to this, and currently we're in phase 2. And from what I've seen so far, we probably won't expect mainnet to be out until at least the next 2 years, maybe even pushing 3 years. And right now, there is a total supply of only 3 billion tokens out of a max supply of 10 billion. Now, the reason the total supply is 3 billion is because those ERC, or that red portion of the distribution, that is the ERC20 and BEP20 token standards, which pretty much just means that those are wrapped tokens on the Ethereum mainnet as well as the Binance Smart Chain mainnet, that they're pretty much able to be used on those networks right now and purchased as wrapped SAITO tokens, which is for multiple reasons, but the main reason that SAITO has stipulated is that it allows users to actually buy SAITO tokens right now and trade them. Now, you can trade them, as I said before, for the actual mainnet tokens themselves, but they're not transferable from the mainnet tokens back out of into these wrapped tokens as of just yet, because they're waiting obviously for the mainnet to be released. And I just want to say for the record that the remaining 7 billion tokens are able to be circulated once, of course, the mainnet is out. So that's the discrepancy right there. But until that does happen, until mainnet is released, we only have to concern ourselves with the total supply of 3 billion tokens. Now, the only concerning thing to say is that out of these 3 billion tokens, a majority of them, as you can see right now, are controlled pretty much by the seed round investors and also the private sale investors, which for the most part is pretty concerning if you ask me. But nevertheless, I believe that when they migrate over to the mainnet, there'll be some sort of burn mechanism involved here as well, which I will touch on in my full breakdown video as well, okay? But the really cool thing is when SAITO actually goes to full mainnet, they're proposing a layer 2 EVM solution, okay? So SAITO is, as we all know, when individual networks build, they're siloed, right? They're not instantly, unless they have created some sort of compatibility with other virtual machines, they're not natively compatible with other networks, okay? So SAITO is no exception, right? But they're creating a layer 2 solution, just kind of like Aurora is on Near Protocol, if you're familiar with Near Protocol. So Aurora is a shard that is a permanent shard on Near that is only EVM compatible, right? Smart contracts can be created on Aurora and interact with the Ethereum mainnet or other EVM networks. SAITO is doing the same thing, okay? So they're focusing on a layer 2 solution that will allow developers to build and interact with EVM compatible network, which I believe is super important for the longevity of any sort of layer 1 network, because fundamentally Ethereum is going to be here for quite a while, at least I believe, and being EVM compatible is a standard for most layer 1 networks, and that's why other protocols like Algorand haven't done that right now, but are ferociously trying to make the AVM, which is their virtual machine, compatible with the EVM, okay? So it's great to see SAITO's focusing on that right now, okay? And with that, guys, that's going to pretty much conclude today's video. My price prediction for 2025, considering, or at least contingent on the fact that SAITO actually launches its mainnet, I believe it'll 100x from today's price, which is around about 1.2 cents. So guys, with that all said, thank you so much for watching this video. I seriously cannot urge you enough to stay tuned for that breakdown video, because you are going to learn a hell of a lot, not just about SAITO, but real problems facing every cryptocurrency right now. With that said, take care all. Talk to you all soon. Bye.